When guilt is unresolved for a long time and we're carrying it without addressing it, I think it erodes into shame.
Welcome to the You and You podcast, hosted by me, Sanjiv. If you hear something that resonates with you today, please share it with a friend who might need to hear it. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a review. In this podcast, we explore a word or a phrase in each episode, not just what it means, but how it lives in us and how it shapes our thoughts, our bodies, and the way we move through the world. In this season, it's all about safety and what I call our inner weather. It's about understanding what's going on beneath the surface, the patterns, the conditioning, the signals we often ignore, and learning how to come back to ourselves. Today's word is guilt, and where that meets belonging. Most guilt isn't about doing something wrong, or is it about the fear of losing where you belong? And if that's true, then a lot of us aren't actually choosing our lives, or are we maintaining our place in other people's lives? But really, this is all about belonging. I'm joined by the most amazing Mani, founder of the Veda Soul Company. Mani spent many years working in high-performing corporate environment in investment banking before stepping into something very different, creating spaces and products that are deeply intentional, thoughtful, and grounded in how we actually experience ourselves day to day. Everything she creates has a level of care and precision to it, and you can feel it. And it's something that I've always been drawn to. In this conversation, we explore guilt, not as something to fix or get rid of, but as something that might be pointing us towards connection, identity, and the places where we've learned to prioritize ourselves over others. So let's get into it. Welcome, Mani.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your generous introduction and for having me here today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. When you think about guilt, do you feel it more in your mind or in your body?
I definitely feel it more in my body, but it hasn't always been that way. That's been an evolution for me to feel it in my body as I became more and more connected to my own feelings. You know, we have a transition from living out life with a different locum perspective where we're living from outside in.
Yes.
And it's all about what's happening on the outside world and what do other people think of us. And then I think we each have a journey through our lifetimes that takes us and switches that perspective from inside out. So as I became more inside out, I think it's dropped more into my body.
So how long ago was that?
I would say over the last decade, I've really started to process things more from a body perspective.
That's interesting. Is that the transition point of when you left your career?
I think it started happening mid-career, but I didn't know how to put language or terminology or understanding around that. So it was a little bit of a experiential learning, shall I say.
When do you remember first feeling guilt? And what did you feel you might lose in that moment?
So I remember feeling guilt from quite a young age, actually. And as I was contemplating this question, I was really thinking, did I even know what guilt was? But I did. Looking back on it, retrospectively, I did know what it was. I might not have been able to put a word to it, but it was really, I had this really immense sense of feeling responsible for everything around me.
Yeah.
And obviously that was trauma-led, which I didn't know at the time. And it was around not being able to leave a room when everyone else had walked out. It's like I felt like I had to stay. So a metaphoric room. So if, something was going on for someone and I felt like I needed to stay and be there, I felt responsible. Yeah. And when I was moving away from that space, then the guilt would come in. And it's this unfathomable kind of carrying of responsibility that wasn't mine.
Was that because it was implied or because it was definitely requested of you?
I think a combination of what was implied, expected, conditioned in me, and the way I had come to see life through my own experience as a child, going through the traumas that I've gone through and the experiences that I've gone through. And that's where I ended up thinking I was responsible. And obviously I've had to unpick that, but that's where I would say it started.
Do you think guilt is something imposed on us or it's something that we learn?
It's an experience we have. It's an emotion we have. I think in response to our environment. And some of that is imposed upon us. Some of it is learned behavior. Some of it's conditioned, where there's these secret unspoken codes that say, you should behave in this way. And when we deviate from that, we feel a sense of guilt. So I think it's a combination, but a lot of it is imposed, I would say, and it comes from ancestry. It comes from so many different things.
Can you tell me what you think guilt is actually trying to tell us?
It's like I think a two-sided coin. So there's one side of it, which is, I think guilt has a purpose in giving us a moral compass. So we feel guilty if we've done something we shouldn't do. We've spoken to someone in a tone or a manner or used language that was actually inappropriate. And that guilt, I would say, is relevant and it's healthy, because what it does is it guides us back to the center point of our moral compass. But then there's the other guilt, which is where it's imposed. And because we don't know how to live our lives on our own terms, we feel guilty when we're doing something that doesn't fit a norm. Whether that norm is healthy or not is another question altogether. And then when guilt is unresolved for a long time and we're carrying it without addressing it, I think it erodes into shame.
What do you think it's cost you? Those times when you couldn't leave the room, the metaphorical room, which I think is great. It's a really interesting way of putting it, because I was like, leaving the room? But like the metaphorical room it's quite absorbing, I assume. But what did it cost you?
It cost me connection with myself, because each time you stay in the room when actually perhaps is the moment you should leave, you're abandoning yourself to stay there. And I think through that journey, what I think I did, and I realize it now as I look back, and I've been on a deep kind of introspective journey of understanding myself and unpicking some of that stuff, is that all the places where I abandoned myself, where I didn't know how to embody my own body. So I stopped trusting my own body, and as a result, just disengaged more and more and more, became disconnected with my own body. And I think that's what it's cost me. And that comes with a plethora of other side effects.
I think it's quite interesting how you also said that now you feel guilt in your body, whereas initially you were very disconnected from that.
And that's where the words have the power. If someone says, they put the guilt trip on you, that those words have the power, because you don't have the reference point of going inside and going, well, actually, that doesn't feel good in my body. I don't agree with that. The words have greater power.
They do. It's that moment where you kind of kick yourself for not saying something, isn't it? And staying silent. Do you think that is a cost also? The cost of staying silent when you're in that moment, do you think that adds to the guilt that you might feel?
Because it is self-perpetuating, really, isn't it? Because that feeling, that sensation, like that I feel, and I feel like for me, it's a pull in my solar plexus now that I understand that, where it's my power center being pulled. But at the time, when I was unaware of all of that, then the guilt would just exacerbate and amplify, because each time you take a step away from succumbing to that guilt or that guilt trip or that power over, the guilt just amplifies, and then it just layers and layers and layers. And like I say, some of it starts rotting underneath into shame, and you're left with a lot of heaviness that you're holding, and then you forget why even, but it just becomes a part of you.
So do you think guilt is something that we pay the price by to stay connected to certain people?
I think so, especially when we're servicing that guilt. And not necessarily in a healthy way. We're servicing that guilt because it sometimes is the easier way of living. Like you just do what's being asked of you, and then you lose that sense of self. But then it becomes an identity, because there's that little bit of dopamine hit that you get from fulfilling that person or situation's needs, even though those needs go against your own needs. And then it just becomes, when it becomes intertwined with your identity, and I think that's where people pleasing and rescuing kind of becomes a big thing, because that becomes your way of being. That's the only way you know how to add value to the world around you.
Do you think guilt is more placed on women than it is on men? Not in a cultural setting of us being brown women, but like just generally as male, female. Do you think women carry more guilt constantly?
I would say there is some truth in that. And I think it comes from the just the nature of women's roles up until now,
Yeah.
where they are so multidimensional in so many, they're so many facets to a woman's life.
Yes.
And so many opposing facets, because career, work, motherhood, being a daughter, being a sister, being an auntie, so many, different roles which sometimes conflict with one another. So yes, I do think it, guilt is carried more because society will say, oh, but you need to be, a great mother. This is how, you're a great mother. And then people carry guilt because they're not hitting those bars, especially, if they're, nowadays it's in your face all the time through social media and so much information. But those values came at a point when a woman maybe wasn't working.
Yes.
They haven't been calibrated to a 21st century modern woman in her life.
Well, it's quite interesting because I think what happens is that you have the woman who's working.
Yeah.
And then they become a mother and then they still have to work.
Yeah.
And then it might be that they have to then leave their children, which they necessarily don't want to. And then it's all that mental load.
Yeah.
Then there's everything around them in the environment that is constantly selling to them.
Yeah.
That to make them more perfect than they already probably are doing an outstanding job.
And then there's guilt over taking time out because they need time out. But I've been away from my children all week. How can I take time out?
Do you think that pressure comes from guilt from the self? Do you think it's from other women, society, or the men even? Like, whose expectations do you think this guilt comes into?
I think it comes from a plethora of external, but guilt can only truly manifest and be a negative influence in our own bodies when we don't know how to, when we give power to that externally kind of invading guilt or imposition of guilt, and don't have the power to kind of to be in our own center and realize what's right for me, then we're going to give all of that external influence the power.
It's like when you put yourself first, then you're made to feel guilty for doing that because actually you're creating a boundary.
Exactly. So it's coming back to yourself and being in your sovereignty and saying, this is how I want to live my life. I'm comfortable with the way I'm compartmentalizing this.
Yeah.
And I guess that helps us to ask for help as well, because the guilt comes from a place of, I need to be handling all of this by myself. I need to be spinning all these plates and they should be falling.
Yeah.
And, when we can really begin to understand that and take ownership of it and also push back on what is not healthy, that's when we can start to open to different solutions, different options.
So you've mentioned your body a few times and that it shows up in your body. So what actually happens in your body when guilt shows up to you?
I just feel this nausea in my solar plexus.
Oh,
and now
really?
I've come to understand that. I realize it's the control game at play.
Yeah.
And it's, do I want to be giving my power away here? Or do I need to hold a boundary? Or is it something I need to address? So for example, if it's a moral compass issue where I've done something that I'm not so proud of, then yes, I need to tune into that and I need to make amends in whichever way that situation requires me to. So I think feeling into your body really allows you to be in your authenticity and really then from that authenticity be able to take the next step, whether that is to go and apologize to someone or whether it is to kind of say, no, there's a boundary here.
Yes.
And, I'm drawing it and I'm holding it.
When did that last happen for you, as an example?
When I last apologized, it happens often, but less often now because I catch myself in the awareness of when I'm doing that, when I'm overcompensating.
Yes.
Because more recently, I think I've really caught myself kind of going, why am I over-explaining this? Why am I justifying this? Why am I apologizing when I haven't done anything wrong? So I've learned to really recognize that and stay in my authenticity and really tune into what is it that I'm trying to say here. And if it's not an apology, then I need to make sure it's not an apology. And I need to frame it in a way that's going to be healthy for both of us in the conversation. But also is true, because otherwise you don't move forward.
When I come to your events, they're beautifully held. You create such warmth and love within those spaces, and you can just tell like the level of detail and attention you put into everything. There's such passion there. And when I order your products, they always arrive, and there's such a good vibe about them. It's beautiful. Do you think any of that is driven by guilt, or is it by something else? That kind of perfectionism that you have, that level of detail?
Doing things in a certain way has always been really important to me, because I want to really infuse my expression of love into everything that I do. So that small attention to detail has been important. But through the journey, absolutely, it's been intertwined with that sense of guilt, because when we don't feel like what we're doing is enough, because guilt is also a manifestation of a lack of self-worth, I think, as well, because we feel like, what we're doing isn't enough. So therefore we have to supplement it. We have to enhance it. And absolutely, there's been moments when I think, why am I doing all of this? This is burning me out. This is not okay. Or I'm not pricing all of this in. So therefore I'm left, shortfall. And, that's been a game that I've, had to really learn to understand and master in a way, and recognize when that guilt is creating a procrastination, when you're trying to perfect something, this never-ending perfection kind of cycle.
Do you actually start?
Yeah, and then you're just constantly trying to perfect it because you're avoiding actually releasing it, because you feel guilty, or you feel like, who am I to send this message, or who am I to hold these ceremonies or do this thing? So yes, it's been peppered with that journey.
Yes.
But overall, there's been that underlying deep intention to always express love through everything I say, do, and be. That's something that's always been part of me.
Are you saying that pressure can turn into a little bit of guilt because you feel like you maybe haven't necessarily spun it enough or right, and the point of when to stop?
Yeah. So the guilt can just lead to you, because of the lack of self-worth.
Yeah.
That's coming through that guilt. You can feel like it's not good enough. I need to give more.
Yeah.
But to the point where you've lost the balance, and
what is the cost?
To learn that.
Yeah. What's the cost been to
Burnout. Burnout, not, from a business perspective, not making money on things because, you've put so much into the bells and whistles that actually you're not left with anything, because you've spent everything on the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And the bells and whistles sometimes are the mask that the guilt makes you, because you think, I'm not worthy of charging this, so I need to add this. And then before you know it, you've overgiven,
for the price that you would want to charge for something.
Absolutely. So I think that's a constant challenge. I think most people in a heartfelt business do deal with.
How do you personally recognize the difference between caring for others and abandoning yourself?
Through my body. Again, through my body. I've come to understand it through my body.
Yeah.
My body has been my greatest teacher, but it required a lot to come back to it, because I'd abandoned it for so long. I didn't know how to inhabit it. And I think the more I've really come back to it and really come home to myself, that's when I really begin to be able to see, okay, this is not mine, this is mine. And yes, I will absolutely address it, and I will be happy to have an honest, open conversation about it. But where something isn't mine, I've really learned to understand that age-old tendency within me to kind of pick up the shopping bags, the metaphoric shopping bags that aren't mine. And now I'm learning to kind of put them down, or to say, no, they're not mine. I can support you, but you have to do the carrying of that. And really, that's taken a lot of time, and it's still work in progress. But the more I've come back into my body, I've really noticed that.
And do you think it helps the other person by when you actually create that boundary?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the most profound things that I think, it's simple yet so profound, is that, we hear it all the time, that love comes from within, respect starts from within, and all of these things start from within. But it's so true, because if, for example, I'll give you a typical example. If you've been invited to go somewhere and every part of your body is saying, I can't do it because I don't have the energy for it, or I'm not in the right mindset, or I really need some time out. Like I've come to really make peace with the fact that there's a huge introvert aspect of me. So while I'm in my 4 of ceremony or doing any of the work that I do, then I can engage that extrovert part of me because it's there. But there's a huge part of me that's introvert. And I've come to really learn to love and respect that and not feel guilty for being in that introvert. And so there are times when I'm like, I really need to withdraw my energy. I need to go into my cave.
Is that where you recharge then rather
That's where
than
I recharge.
with other people?
Yeah, I recharge in my introvert space.
Yeah.
And I've come to really understand that. That's the way I work, and I want to honor that. Yeah. And what I've come to realize is if I'm just going to this event, despite every part of me saying, no, you need to, then I'm not going to do service when I go to this event because my energy won't want to be there. Yeah. So I've come to a point where I actually say to my friends and my loved ones, I actually don't have the energy I can give you. So I can't meet you for that coffee or whatever we were going to because I can't be fully present with you.
Yes.
And I want to be. And that's the truth. Because when you respect yourself, automatically you're respecting the other person. Otherwise,
and their
time. Because otherwise I would end up going for that coffee and not be able to focus on anything they're saying and feel really drained and impact the energy field that we're sharing. Yeah. So it's kind of really learning that love first comes from within. When you love yourself, you automatically love the other person. They might not see it that way because they don't like you saying no or cancelling on them. But it's, again, coming back to that, being in your authenticity and being true to yourself and staying in that point and not being pulled away from that center point because somebody else is having a hard time dealing with it. Because again, that's their baggage.
How much of the guilt we carry do you think is actually ours? And how much of it is that we've just absorbed?
I think we are always absorbing guilt. Even like what's going on the planet at the moment.
Oh,
you know, we're all absorbing the guilt of what's happening, even though we've got nothing to do with, we might not have any direct involvement in what's happening, but the guilt is there to be absorbed. That's why in these times, it's even more important to be in that center point to kind of go, right, I can't physically do anything about that, but what can I do?
Yeah.
And to empower ourselves, because otherwise it's so easy to enter the doom and gloom of it all and feel helpless. So I think the guilt is always around us to be absorbed, but it's being in that center point to sort of decide, okay, how much of this guilt is mine to take, or how much of it is there to inspire me to do something that I can do within the gift of what I have available to me, but also to steer us right when it's a moral compass issue, you know, where we've done something that actually wasn't fair or right or kind, and we need to kind of make amends for that.
Because you mentioned inherited guilt as well before. Do you feel like you personally have had any inherited guilt, or do you think that you've just kind of gone, yeah, no, not in this instance here?
Yeah, I definitely have been subject to inherited guilt. I think a lot of us have, because even as the generations kind of go on, you know, guilt, you know, it's strange because I was looking up guilt. I thought, where does this word guilt come from? So I looked it up in the dictionary. And it's really interesting because, and I always go back to like Latin or Sanskrit because they're like such seed languages.
Yeah,
and
but the Indian languages are Indo-Anglican.
Yes. And when you go back to the seed of it, you realize guilt is all about doing something wrong, sinning. And it's what you then do with that, you know. But as we've become more emotionally aware, I think guilt has taken on a whole new meaning. It's really become an emotional thing that we all carry, because as we've gone up through the generations, gone up the Maslow hierarchy, we've had the opportunity and what ancestors might call a bit of indulgence of being able to be emotional about things. You know, it's that typical thing when teenagers are having tantrum and their parents will say, God, first world problems.
Yeah.
But it's because, you know, we are, as a society, we're moving up the Maslow hierarchy. So things become, we have got time to really process our emotions. The education understanding is there. Psychology's advanced so much. And we understand how human behaviors works.
I kind of get the idea of what a Maslow hierarchy is, but what is it?
Yeah, so my understanding of Maslow hierarchy is, you know, it's a triangle, and it's the base of it is, you know, I need my food, I need my water, I need shelter.
It's that one.
And then you know, and as you go up the layers, it becomes more, I guess, eccentric, less materialistic, and more about the emotions. So obviously, the emotional kind of intelligence, which is why sometimes when we're having conversations with the elder generation, the emotion isn't quite there.
Yes.
And it's not because it's absent, it's because they're just not being used to accessing that part of themselves, because everything was about, I need to make sure function. I need to make sure there's bread on the table and roti on the table. And, I need to make sure the basics are covered. There's a roof over our head. We've paid the rent, or we're paying the mortgage on time, all of these things. And I think as we've evolved as humans, we become more aware of guilt. But guilt is still that thing that is around us all the time. How much we absorb it, in which way we absorb it, comes down to how centered we are in ourselves, in knowing ourselves.
Yes, because you mentioned first world problems, and loneliness, which is epidemic at the moment, has been classed by some as a first world problem. And I'm thinking, well, actually, countries in the East, they're just a bit more open potentially to being in a bit more of a community, where we have gone into a very weird societal mode where we are so disengaged with people around us potentially, and our families, as people have moved away. But I'm wondering if guilt is one of the first things that humans ever felt within the tribe.
I think, from my understanding of just seeing things back home in India and the village, and learning about different communities and tribal kind of dynamics, there was space to talk about that. So if something had happened, there was that community where you would, so there were no metaphoric rooms where people had left and there was no one there and then you felt responsible. There was that network to talk about these things. So guilt was probably there, but it didn't become a thing because it was talked about.
It was mediated as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And then it didn't have time to erode into shame, because it was, okay, you've done that to that person, should you have left them out there? Because they'd broken their leg. Should you have, all of this thing, and it's talked about. And I think that's the key thing. It's when things aren't talked about and they're internalized, then they start eroding into other things, and then they start spitting out into behaviors that are erratic, and actually very projection quality.
What has it looked like for you to make choices that others might not understand?
Empowering, but very lonely. It's a lonely space, because when you start to make those choices, especially when you haven't made them in the past, you are almost ruffling the feathers of an ecosystem that you've created around you. For example, we talked earlier about enabling and how sometimes we enable that behavior where we keep that loop alive. And so that person's always expecting us to drop everything and be there for them. And then when suddenly we don't, for them, that feels like a personal attack. So yes, it has felt really lonely, but keep coming back to the self and feeling how that feels in my body, and really understanding this. I can only truly respect another person or love or care for another person if I'm first doing that for myself. Because it can only really come from inside out. That's really helped me. But it's a lonely space, because you have to navigate the change of that whole ecosystem and people throwing their toys out of the pram because suddenly you're not behaving the way you used to. Like, this object is now faulty. It doesn't work the way it used to work, What do I do with it, And
computer says no.
Computer says no. And it's holding space for yourself through that, which I think is why we flake, and we might kind of stay with it for a few days, and then it becomes too hard But to change that ecosystem is where the real change happens. And you need the right support around you. You need deep awareness for that, to navigate that.
So when the computer says no in your ecosystem, and you've created that change, and it's upset the balance of what was expected from previous past behaviors, learned behaviors, have you managed to rectify those spaces in your new equilibrium that is acceptable? Or do you still find it's still choppy waters?
It's something I'm still working through, but I'm finding it easier, because I'm learning to recognize this projection or this behavior that's coming back at me. How much of it is mine? How much do I need to go and have an honest conversation and try and help that person to understand this isn't personal? And how much of it is me? Is it for me to kind of say, that's your stuff, you need to work it out. So while I've invested a lot in conversations, I'm also then recognizing really being discerning with where I'm supporting someone to understand the changes that are happening, and to help them to not take them personally, but also to recognize when I'm then veering into over-explaining territory, where again, that's guilt, because it's like I have to explain myself. I have to justify my behavior. So it's a real kind of fine line.
Do you think that sometimes there's actually no point in having to explain the change, that you just have to let them deal with it?
Yes.
Or is that harsh?
I've had to really learn that, I think. And there are certain relationships where I've just kind of said, explaining this isn't really going to get me anywhere. And it's going to probably turn into something really toxic because that person's situation dynamic is not ready for that, or it's just not the right time or space. And do I want to invest that energy? And it's kind of picking your battles, really.
Yes.
So I have learned to start stepping away in some cases, and I've had to really deal with the guilt in that, because it's like, well, you could be helping here, and actually you've just stepped away. But again, redressing, but is that mine or is that theirs?
Yes.
And it's a constant assessment situation.
If someone feels like being themselves might cost them belonging, what would you want them to know?
This runs through the trail of my work, which is bringing people back into their own power. Because, we've given our power away to so many places. It's like we've got all of these little power cords coming out of our solar plexus, and at the end of each power cord, effectively, is a remote control, which the person that you've given it to probably doesn't even know that they're holding, but they can press your buttons because they can make you feel guilty. And it's really coming back to that center and recognizing that love, self-respect, care, it all starts from you. If you're not respecting yourself, there's no way you can respect another human being. If you're not loving yourself, there's no way you can love another human being. If you're not caring for yourself, there's no way you can care for another human being. It starts from within. And it's really coming home to yourself and remembering you're here in this human existence to explore, to be, to live your life, rather than someone else's version of it.
So if you feel guilty now, ask yourself, is this something that I care about? Or is it the fear of losing belonging?
Yeah.
Where do you sit with guilt? Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Manny, for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it. Have a top-tastic day. Yay!